Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to cover the new enhanced standards for person-centered excellence with distinction. We have changed the standards to reflect changing expectations and to help agencies continue to move forward in their quality journey. So, as most of you know, we have a variety of listeners on the webinar today. So I want to, some of this will be repeat information for some of you, but for some people it will be new information. So I just wanted to quickly overview the accreditation process and a few other things before we start digging into the details of the PC with distinction. So CQL partners with organizations that really want to transform their organization. And so one part of that transformation is accreditation. And there's also our training activities, the data that we present, that we collect and analyze and then present. We also provide consultation and certification. So most of the people on the phone, I believe, are from accredited agencies. But just wanted to spend just a second talking about why accreditation is important. And the biggest reason that accreditation is important is because it's an outside organization looking at the agency providing services and validating those things that are doing well. So we also give recommendations on what organizations could do better. We engage in an appreciative inquiry approach, and we encourage agencies to use data. So here are what some people are saying about CQL accreditation. Susie Burke says that we found CQL really impacts the people we support. And we hear that very often from organizations, that it encourages the agency to move forward from the perspective of the people that they're supporting. Kelly Kinderman says that it drives our commitment to continuous improvement. CQL does not expect perfection, but we do expect progress on the plans that an agency puts in place, on its quality improvement plans. We do try to engage a sense of excitement among stakeholders, as Carmine says. And then we also, as Jeff Peterson says, we do try to build on an organization's strengths. We try to stress those commendations as well as recommendations so agencies can use what they're doing well to take an appreciative inquiry approach to those things that they wish to do better. And then Kim Zeller says that our data is all very central to their strategic planning. So some of the strengths of accreditation are that when CQL comes out, we do tend to accredit the entire organization. If an agency provides medical services, within a clinic setting, we do not accredit that, mostly because agencies, or that requires a different type of accreditation than what CQL provides. But we do want to look at the whole agency and ensure that best practices are being embraced at all levels. We also integrate data capabilities into accreditation. We ask agencies not only to collect data, but to analyze that data and take action steps based on that data. So we want organizations to be data informed. We also stress the partnership with organizations. So CQL shares resources. We have several different ways of doing that through our website, through our Facebook page, through a Twitter feed, and through webinars like this. And we also offer different trainings. We can do training in whatever an agency requests. It doesn't have to be something that is already on our training menu. We're willing to come up with new trainings. And then, of course, we use an appreciative inquiry approach. So some of the tools that accredited agencies use and the tools that agencies seeking Person-centered excellence with distinction are the basic assurances, personal outcome measures, shared values, and community life. The community life measures are going to be looked at during PCE with distinction. CQL decided that initially the community life measures were going to be used for all levels of accreditation, but we really thought that it fit better with the PCE with distinction, so agencies can ensure that they're having an impact on the community in which they serve. So the process of accreditation for PC with distinction is really not going to change. Agencies will still complete a request for engagement. We'll have planning meetings. We'll schedule your visit. The agency will complete the on-site or complete the self-assessments. The team will arrive at the organization to do the on-site visit. You'll have an award letter, and then you'll have a plan of enhancement. And it continues to be a 4-year accreditation term. We did discuss the length of accreditation for PCE with distinction and decided that 4 years would be the maximum that we would go due to too long of a time period between accreditations is not really supportive of agencies. So some of the standard components are remaining the same, where we'll have pre-accreditation planning meetings. So we'll set up conference calls with members of the agencies prior to accreditation, where we'll talk through the process, including next steps. There will be a series of organizational self-assessments, which will include a basic assurances self-assessment, the community life self-assessment, and the shared value self-assessment. The basic assurances self-assessment is available in portal. However, the shared values and the community life assessments will be available via Word documents. So while on the on-site visit, CQL will continue to conduct site visits at a representative sample of programs where the agency provides services. We will do focused and targeted personal outcome measure interviews. We will likely not conduct entire personal outcome measure interviews because at this level of accreditation, agencies are expected to have reliable interviewers conducting those interviews. So we will spend time with your aggregate data for the personal outcome measure interviews, and we'll be discussing that with you. But we'll also find some practice information by having some targeted conversations with people receiving services, DSPs, and other stakeholders. We'll also hold focus groups. We will definitely hold DSP focus group and self-advocate focus groups. We may also hold, depending on the types of services that the agency provides, we may hold focus groups with family members or other types of stakeholders. The stakeholder event will continue, but it will be mostly led by the organization and with CQL support. So we're not going to just let you hang out there and do it all on your own. We'll be there to support you and help facilitate that event. And that is where the agency will have their person-centered excellence plans developed, is during that meeting. And then we will also spend quite a bit of time looking at your data and your analysis of that data. So these are the different levels of accreditation. Most of you are familiar with these. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but for person-centered excellence with distinction, it's the same basic accreditation standards, but there are new eligibility requirements. So PCE with distinction is intended for organizations that have a focus already on health, safety, and human security. So those are the basic assurances. We also want organizations to be dedicated to the shared values, basic assurances, and community life. And then improving the personally defined quality of life through the use of CQL's personal outcome measures. We also are requiring that agencies collect reliable data via currently certified interviewers or trainers. And then organizations have to have an established quality management system that is integrated, that incorporates personal outcome measures, and that is mostly around factor 10. And then we want agencies to commit to take a lead role in engaging stakeholders in the development and implementation of the What Really Matters plan. So for the next few minutes, we're going to talk about the accreditation status, the different settings, additional eligibility requirements, some of the assessments that you'll collect, and organizational transformation. So for agencies that are going to pursue PCE with distinction, they will have to have achieved 2 cycles of CQL accreditation. So agencies who are brand new to CQL, who have not engaged with us for accreditation, are not able to apply until they have achieved 2 cycles of CQL accreditation. We also want agencies to have a minimum annual representative sample of 10% of the total agency size, or 200 personal outcome measure interviews, whichever number is lower. And we decided this in partnership with our data analyst and researcher, Carly Friedman, what would be a good number of interviews to do that would give you a representative sample. And we do accredit a lot of agencies who serve thousands of people. And if we required, a 10% sample every year, that would simply be too much for an agency to collect, especially since we're requiring it to be reliable. So we're sensitive to that. The number is negotiable. You just have to contact Carly and I to talk about that, about what your sample size should be. And then there is some guidance on the personal outcome in the personal outcome measures manual, starting on page 90, on how to choose a representative sample. So as far as residential and work settings, new agencies to person-centered excellence with distinction. So if you've never had PC with distinction, and if you have campus type settings, institutions, or large congregate residential or work settings, you are not eligible to apply unless. So I need to stress unless there, because we're not saying that you can't apply at all. We're asking agencies that they have to prove demonstration that people who live on those campuses or in those large settings have access to the community, the same access to the community as people do without disabilities. We also would like a formal commitment to downsizing that includes objective and measurable criteria, and then some degree of success with the downsizing plan. So it's really not good enough just to come to us with a downsizing plan that you haven't implemented yet. And then we want to ensure that agencies can demonstrate person-centered planning and support despite the limitations of the physical environment. Part of this, the reason for doing this, is that it's more in alignment with the HCBS settings rule. And our data shows that people who live in smaller settings do have greater community access. And it is what people receiving services to prefer. They prefer smaller settings as a whole, not every person, of course. And that large congregate settings do have the potential to isolate. So the other thing, one other thing that we're requiring is that evidence that the agency does not have systems and practices in place that allow, and these are mostly from indicator 8E, people are free from unnecessary and intrusive interventions. So these are floor restraints, takedowns, or standing orders for restraint, use of timeout rooms, use of as-needed psychotropic medications for behavior control. I want to stress that is for behavior control, not for if someone has a diagnosis of a panic disorder and they need to, take a medication to help control that panic. Those are conversations that we'll have with you. But PRN psychotropics for behavior control is prohibited. Then also the use of corporal punishment, seclusion, noxious or aversive stimuli, forced exercise, and denial of food or liquids that are part of a person's nutritional adequate diet. So if the agency has any of those systems and practices in place that allow these, then they are not eligible to apply for PC with distinction. So the CQL certification piece, earlier we talked about how we wanted the personal outcome measure interviews to be conducted by a reliable trainer. So I'm going to go through these following slides rather quickly to allow room for questions, but I did just want to review a few of the requirements for reliable interviewers or trainers. So we asked for a 10% or a 200 sample for as the criteria of accreditation. We will verify your certified interviewer or your trainers, their names and certification dates, and those must be current reliable interviewers or certified trainers. And then we want to make sure that your data collection is conducted by a certified interviewer. Don't forget that only CQL staff can designate people as certified interviewers or trainers. We do not delegate that task to other staff that are not CQL staff. So just a reminder of that. These are the steps to be a certified interviewer. The person would attend a POM workshop, the 4-day workshop. They'll have coaching with a CQL staff member. They will have inter-rater reliability testing that has to be 85%, and then they will be a certified interviewer. And then prior to that reliability assessment, the candidate will complete an interview, follow-up activities, and make decisions. They will come to the coaching interview prepared to share their decisions and rationale as well as ask any questions, or they can complete an interview, follow-up activities, and make decisions with the CQL staff. And this would be scheduled between the coaching interview and the reliability assessment. So there are two options for prior to the reliability assessment for certified interviewers. To be a successful certified interviewer, you have to have sufficient information to answer at least 40 of the 42 outcome measures and supports, and then there has to be 85% agreement with the CQL staff. So also another standard for PC with distinction is the impact and influence an agency has on their community. So it's important for us to look at what the community perception of an agency is, and then we want the agency to provide evidence of the positive impact it has had on its community. We also want to ensure that the agency is part of the community, and a lot of these questions can be answered via the community life assessment and validation. So to get a sense of the perception of an agency, we would look at the agency's website and their social media accounts. We could look at Glassdoor to see what kind of responses agencies are getting, although that's probably not as likely as just talking to stakeholders about what the agency means to the community. That it's not just, that it's actually part of the community and adds value to the community in which they provide services. So if an agency provides services in multiple communities, we're going to look at the agency as a whole, not just, in this town or this town, but the agency perception as a whole. And we'll gather that from a variety of places. So let's talk for a minute about person-centered approaches. We want to see evidence of advocacy efforts. So not just self-advocacy, which quite a few agencies are really making some great strides in supporting self-advocates to, speak up about what they want and what they want from their agency and what they want their life to be like. We also want to see some advocacy efforts for local, state, and national systems. And we do know that not-for-profit agencies obviously have some rules to follow about lobbying, so we are sensitive to those, and we will ensure that we're not requiring agencies to do things that are outside the scope of some of the IRS laws. We don't want anyone to get in trouble. But we do want to make sure that agencies are really supporting people, and by that I mean all people, to advocate for systems change and positive systems change. And that can be anywhere from increased funding to maybe some less restrictive regulation requirements and things like that. So people receiving services, DSPs, agency leadership, families, the people who want to be included in those advocacy efforts should be included in those advocacy efforts. We also want to see evidence of person-centered planning and person-directed planning meetings. This is something that a lot of agencies struggle with, but there are some really, really good things going on out there. And a lot of this information is going to be gathered around some targeted conversations with people who've had a recent planning meeting. It will also, we'll gather that information from focus groups and the agency leadership regarding how planning meetings occur. And then with the advancement of technology, we really want to celebrate those organizations who are using innovative strategies to support people. And that may or may not be the use of technologies. A lot of times it is, but it doesn't have to be. There are also agencies doing some wonderful things with using existing and emerging natural support networks to support people and helping people make connections with their communities and using social capital as a way to support people innovatively. So we'll also be looking at those things too. So during the stakeholder meeting, we want the agency to co-facilitate that stakeholder meeting to really take some ownership in leading that. So the balloting process, as it currently does, that takes place prior to the stakeholder meeting, that will continue. And the agency will lead the development of the What Really Matters plan with support from CQL. So we would want you to present some information on your current plan and where it's going, what you've accomplished with that plan. We really want you to celebrate those successes. It usually will include strategic planning data that the agency has collected, because very often what we see is that the What Really Matters plan is integrated into the strategic plan. So you'll have some conversations with your stakeholders around those things. So organizational transformation. So we talked about that at one of the very beginning slides, and we really want to have agencies, this is the opportunity for agencies to really, really shine and talk about those things that they're doing very, very well, and how the accreditation process has really helped to transform your agency. So this is not just a shining star type situation where one person did something really great. We want to hear those stories, but we want to make sure that your stories center around how the organization has changed. So maybe your retention has improved because of some strategies that you have developed. The workforce is stable and qualified, that kind of thing. You also would share stories about people's success stories, and because they were realizing dreams and those goals with supports from agencies. So those are some situations. We could come up with all kinds of examples. We also want to see your robust quality improvement strategies, and we want to see that data that informs those quality improvement strategies. And then the use of CQL's portal for the collection of the personal outcome measures. And then again, evidence of innovative strategies to support people, which are typically success stories for agencies that agencies like to talk about. So the robust quality improvement strategies with accompanying relevant data could include your Factor 10 data, your aggregate POM data, and then any other data that your agency collects. And then we want to see evidence of data analysis and actions. So it's not just good enough to collect the data, you have to do something with it. So just a reminder for Factor 10, it is how the organization monitors and evaluates the presence of basic assurances at both the individual and organizational level. So we want to ensure that organizations are monitoring the basic assurances and that you have a plan that really describes the methods and procedures for collecting that information. So just very briefly, some of the benefits of Portal. It is a streamlined data entry process. You can analyze hundreds and hundreds of different data elements. You can really drill down into the data for the personal outcome measures. There are lots of different types of reporting options. You can compare the agency data with nationally available aggregate data. It's a secure system because there are unique login credentials for individual users. That way you can't overwrite each other. And then, of course, we provide technical assistance for portal issues. So prior to the on-site visit, the agency will complete and submit a basic assurances self-assessment, a shared value self-assessment, a community life self-assessment, and evidence of organization transformation. That evidence piece is really the agencies to make it what they will. When we were coming up with this is the evidence of organizational transformation. We really wanted to be pretty free with what the parameters were. You could send us information, via links, to your website, via videos, via stories, just however you want to submit that evidence. This is kind of yours to own, because this is the really exciting part, is how the agency has transformed. I want to reiterate that since quality is a journey, not all basic assurances must be in alignment at the time of the review. And for those of you who have heard me speak about this before, that is because why we're saying that not all the basic assurances have to be in alignment, it's because there's always work to do. People's expectations change, so the agency changes how it's responding to those expectations. So where you may have had something in place during a prior accreditation because of changing expectations of various stakeholders, what you're doing may not be good enough anymore for people. So we want to make sure that we're very clear in saying we really want to help the agency make progress and move forward on its quality journey. So that's why not all of the 46 indicators have to be in alignment. And then the agency will participate in some planning calls. I anticipate a minimum of 2 planning calls, which is the current, what is currently happening with accreditation calls. I imagine there will be many more than that, as agencies, just have questions and then want to make sure that we're communicating clearly about what our expectations are. So there may be more than 2 planning calls. And then during the initial on-site visit, we're going to validate the assessments that you completed. And many of you know what this validation process is like. We're going to have conversations with people. We're going to have focus groups. We're going to do site visits. We'll do community visits. We'll obviously, talk to leadership, and we'll have the stakeholder meeting to gather even more information. And then we want to make sure that if there are basic assurances out of alignment, that you have a plan of alignment to get those basic assurances into alignment for your agency at that time. We will continue with the mid-cycle visits. We will conduct a second visit between 12 and 18 months. It's usually closer to 18 months. And that will be a call consisting of really updates. Where are you on your basic assurances plan? How's your data for personal outcome measures going? Have there been any changes? We'll talk about Factor 10. We'll review data of your basic assurances. You'll update us on what your PCE, what really matters short-term plan is, and we'll discuss your PCE long-term plan. And then we have the third visit, which will be really all of the above, just updates on your plans. We want to hear some stories of continued transformation. We want to hear that energy that agencies have about the continued transformation. And then there's a specific opportunity here for technical assistance on a challenging issue. And we just implemented this practice for visit 3s because it's about a year out from the expiration of accreditation. And if there are issues that the agency would like our support with, then we will come prepared with some recommendations for those issues for you. Of course, you can reach out to us at any time to talk about those. We're just carving out some time during that 36-month visit to really get at some of those issues. But again, you can, of course, contact us at any time. So what is quite different about this accreditation, the PCE with distinction accreditation, is that it is not determined during the on-site visit. As you know, or as you may know, typically we do announce accreditation at the end of the visit. That will continue with other levels of accreditation, but it will not be with the PCE with distinction. So what will happen is that we will finish the visit, and then a CQL panel will conduct a thorough review of the on-site findings. And then within 10 business days, we will have a phone meeting with the organization to let you know about the decision. So that panel will consist of our CEO and our Vice President of Accreditation and Training, some other CQL staff, and some board members. It will be an odd number. And then that panel will meet and really discuss with the on-site team the results of the review, and then that team will make a decision. So to ensure that we're going to have a thorough review of all of the additional activities, there will be an additional on-site day of the accreditation team. So another quote from Kelly: CQL accreditation pushes us beyond regulatory requirements. It drives our commitment to empower people to achieve their goals and dreams. I just like that quote, so I wanted to share it with you. So I have just presented a lot of information, and you can contact either Gretchen or I with any follow-up questions that you may have. And Seth is manning the question and answer box at this point in time. to see if any questions have been submitted. Does anyone have questions right now?
Yeah, so we did receive one question. So obviously, if anyone else has any, please submit those as soon as you can. We did get a question there. It's about the eligibility requirements, Catherine, and they're just looking for some clarification on what we mean by completing 2 cycles of CQL accreditation.
Sure. So that means 2 cycles would be 2 full accreditation periods. So it could be a basic assurances accreditation, quality assurances accreditation and a PCE accreditation. Those would be, or 2 PCE accreditation cycles. So the accreditation cycle is from the time of the award letter to the time of the expiration of the accreditation. I also wanted to mention that for organizations that are currently accredited under the PCE with distinction, the current criteria, or that will be by the end of the year, because we did respect agencies' requests for engagement for PCE with distinction prior to these changes, we will, late in the fall, we will have a webinar specifically for those agencies to talk to them about how to continue to move forward and continue to meet for their next cycle of accreditation to meet the new standards. So we will be offering that.
And Catherine, there were a few more questions that came in. They're asking if they have to have the CQL certified trainer, and I guess then that would include interviewer. Do they have to have the CQL certified trainer prior to the on-site visit?
They have to have a CQL certified interviewer prior to the on-site visit, yes. It's an eligibility requirement. So it has to be prior to it does not have to be a trainer. However, most agencies that pursue PCE with distinction have a trainer so they can keep up their classes and keep up their data. But they have to have a reliable interview prior to the on-site visit.
Perfect. And then one follow-up question about the eligibility for the two accreditation terms. They're saying, so that means if you're accredited for 4 years, then you need to wait 8 years before applying for distinction. Well,
yes. If you're a first-time accredited agency, it has to be 2 cycles of accreditation. And the reason for that is that we have learned that agencies who go for PCE with distinction right away have some more work to do prior to getting there. So with 2 cycles of accreditation under your belt, those years really give agencies a chance to transform, because we know change is not quick. So you have the opportunity then to change the agency culture, to really educate people about what person-centered, person-directed means, to really get a handle on using the personal outcome measures for agency planning and personal planning. So for all of those reasons, and we did deliberate this quite a bit as a CQL team about how many cycles of accreditation should be required, and we landed on 2 because that really it really allows agencies that time to transform.
The attendee with the questions about the accreditation cycle said thank you. So I'm assuming that you answered it very clearly, and she appreciates it.
Okay. Any other questions, Seth? I'm not opening the questions.
No, it looks like that is all of them in the question box.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I'm not seeing anything else from anyone. So I guess you covered quite a bit in the presentation. There's a question that just came through in the question box of what happens if person-centered excellence accreditation with distinction is not granted, following the review.
Oh, sure. Okay. So if PCE with distinction is not granted, and that's a very good question, so thank you for asking. lots of things could happen. Okay, so let's go through all of the different scenarios. I would say, so a reason that we don't accredit an agency at all, there has to be some pretty egregious things happening, or if the agency just is not willing to change, and it's not willing to listen to recommendations. You know, there are some things that have to be in place for us to accredit an agency. So I don't think this is going to happen with anybody applying with PCE with distinction, that we would not accredit at all. Okay, there are times that we do that because the agency is not doing something to provide for the health, safety, or welfare of the people that they are supporting. What is likely to happen, or what is more likely to happen, is that agencies will be granted PCE, just person-centered excellence accreditation, and then not with distinction. So that's what would likely happen. So 3 things: you could not be accredited at all. You could be granted PCE, or it could be PCE with distinction. So those 3 things could happen. And we would let the agency, we do try to communicate, obviously, with you as we're going through the accreditation process. So, we're gonna let you know of any red flags. We're also gonna let you know of those really great things that we see too. Does that help?
I think so. I think that was a very good response. We did get another question, which I can actually, yes, the person who asked the question responded that, yeah, it did help. Thanks, Catherine.
Okay.
We did get another question that actually I can answer. So they asked if they'll be getting a copy of the slide deck, and the answer is yes. We'll be sending out a link to all registrants, I'd say by the end of next week, and that'll have a link to both the webinar recording and a PDF version of the PowerPoint presentation slide. We have another question that came through, and they're asking, who do they contact to complete the courses to become a CQL certified interviewer, or is there a site to get this information? Right now, what I'll do is through the chat box is I will post a link to where you can get that information, and that just went out just now to all attendees. And if you're logging into this webinar over the phone, what you can do is go to our website, www.c-q-l.org, and there's a tab for training and certification. And there's all sorts of information, and then also contact information for who you would get in touch with to access that information.
If you have questions after this call, if once you've processed all the information, please feel free to pick up the phone and give me a call. Or, of course, you can always email me, and that is the slide that is showing now. So at kdenver@thecouncil.org, or you can also contact Gretchen at gblock@thecouncil.org. I would much rather have agencies ask questions than not ask questions, so please feel free to reach out to us if you come up with a question later.
Excellent, and I'm not seeing any new questions coming through, so if anyone has some final questions, please submit them now. Otherwise, I think we may have covered everything.
Perfect.
Okay.
So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your participation and interest. Again, please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. As Seth stated, he will have the slide deck and the webinar link for this recorded webinar.